Turnovers and the rushing attack. The two main reasons why the Penn State Nittany Lions will beat the Ohio State Buckeyes in Columbus.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, bringing you all things Penn State football and so much more here with the show. You got to check out Prizepicks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prizepicks, daily fantasy sports made easy, is the preview and prediction episode. And if you've seen these ones before, I like to make my prediction first and then defend my reasoning behind it. So we're going to start with the score prediction, and then I got the two main reasons why Penn State is going to get this done, and then some other extracurricular things that are going to unfold, game flow, everything else that you need to know about this game. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, wherever you get your podcast. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win this game, Penn State or Ohio State. It's going to be a close one. It's going to be a close one. And Penn State, they've closed the gap. That is a fact of the matter. But turnovers and the rushing attack, Penn State's defense, they have to continue to live with this identity. Penn State's offense has been a little lackluster, but I think there's a particular reason to that. And the everydayers know that I've mentioned this. But for Penn State, they win this game 27-22. That is my official score prediction. I know a little funky, right? 22 points. That's not a score that happens to be on the board very often. But I think Penn State's defense is going to be the main factor here, complemented by the ground game. The defense forcing turnovers is key. Penn State is going to have to get pressure on Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord has been able to sit back in a pocket. He's been able to look through the defenses that he's been facing. And Penn State, with the pressure that they are going to apply, because this is an Ohio State offensive line that hasn't been that good this season, at least compared to years past. And this is the best defense that the Buckeyes have faced. Yes, they got Notre Dame. I know they played Notre Dame, but Penn State is a better defense than the Fighting Irish. That's just the fact of the matter. And Kyle McCord has been very clean with the football. One interception to this point. And Penn State getting pressure is why they're going to be able to force those turnovers. I'm expecting 2 interceptions from Kyle McCord and a strip sack fumble. Ohio State, I'll give credit where credit's due, is good on the interior of the offensive line, but the tackles, little questionable. And that's where Penn State thrives when it comes to pressure. Outside, cornerback blitzes, having Abdul Carter basically freelance wherever, but Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, deny Dennis Sutton. They get creative off of the edge, and that's where Ohio State, if you're going to pinpoint a weak spot on the offensive line, it is definitely both tackles. So Manny Diaz, who likes to apply pressure 56% of the time as the defensive coordinator, going to have to get pressure in this one, and that is going to be the thing. But let's move to the ground game, because the ground game has, yes, they lead the Big Ten in overall yards per game, but game script has dictated that. We know this. Penn State has had a lot of opportunities to run the football and run the football against bad teams, and then you're going to run the football when you're up by a bunch of points. So game script has dictated that. But I think Penn State has been oddly stubborn with the way that they've run the football, because inside zone has not been working for them. Running up the middle behind the center, the guard, and the guard has not been working. But Penn State, why do they keep doing it? Why do they keep doing that? I think Penn State's they're going to open up the playbook a little more. You have the best tackle in college football. You have a franchise left tackle in Olu Fashanu paving the way. This offensive line is good. I think Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, we've seen a dip in their yards after contact. That's part of the reason here. But I think play calling and working out some things with the interior ground game are the reasons that Penn State hasn't seen its full potential with the ground game on offense. So those things are going to change up, and that's where Penn State's going to be able to see that success. And unlike in years past, when Penn State has the lead, they haven't been able to sit on it. This year, they can do that, where they can grind you down, and that's going to carry over into Ohio State as well. Penn State has the lead, and I do think they will, late in the fourth quarter, they're going to be able to have success on the ground to basically finish the game, and wear Ohio State down. Those are, and I think Penn State's ground game is also going to get some help from the downfield passing attack. Penn State is not going to become this aerial team overnight. They've only attempted 11 passes of 20 plus yards from Drew Aller. And I think that has to do with play calling. I think that has to do with decision making by Drew Aller. It is not because Aller can't throw the football all the way downfield. He's got the arm to do it. But I think decision making by both the coaches and the quarterback himself are the particular reasons why we haven't seen much of the downfield passing, but you haven't had to do it. In this case against Ohio State, you pull out all the stops. So Penn State has been working on a downfield passing game because that's what practice is for. You don't look at a problem and say, well, we're going to neglect that. You're going to focus on it. And then when you make progress, that's when you bring it into a game. So for Penn State, Jim Knowles is going to bring pressure. He's going to try to pressure Drew Aller. He's going to use cover 0. And look how that worked against West Virginia. Everybody thinks that, oh, well, Penn State hasn't had any success passing the football. Let's not forget that Drew Aller had 3 touchdowns to no interceptions and 325 yards against West Virginia, who dared Penn State to throw the football. And that was against a quality opponent. We're finding out that West Virginia is a lot better than advertised and not giving them enough credit. That was a quality opponent that Penn State played. Penn State also beat the Iowa Hawkeyes 31-0. That is a top defense. They haven't needed to use these type of plays, these bread and butter plays, but now you do against the Buckeyes. And I think the running game will benefit because of it and the turnovers setting up short field. So Penn State will be able to do what it has been doing, but against Ohio State. And it's not going to be easy. Ohio State's going to be able to move the football. Ohio State will move the football. They have all the talent in the world. Now, I have some other reasons why this game will unfold the way that it will. But Ohio State, when they get into the red zone, they're not as efficient as you would like them to be. And Penn State also has one of the best run defenses, if you can believe that. Everyone talks about the secondary, and rightfully so. I've talked about the secondary. But the run defense allowing 1.8 yards per play. That's almost unheard of. Ohio State's not far behind. Their run defense is very good as well. But Penn State's defense, 1.8 yards per play against Big Ten opponents. Big Ten opponents. Yes, it was Northwestern. I get that. But Iowa has a good offensive line and a respectable backfield. Yes, there were some injuries, but you still kept the Hawkeyes in check. And Cade McNamara started that game. Well, imagine what the deficit would have been with Deacon Hill at quarterback for Iowa. That's all I'm trying to say. Penn State wins 27-22. I got 4 other reasons why Penn State is able to come out on top in Columbus for the first time in a long time, but also for the first time in the 6 past meetings. It's been 6 years since Penn State beat this team back in 2016. We're now going into year 7, and this is where they break the streak. Penn State has taken a leap forward, a leap. They're not that same team. Well, they went 10-2 a year ago, but remember, they were 7-6 in 2021. In 2020, let's just completely forget about that. They've made a leap forward. Ohio State has taken a step back. Talent's not the same on the roster. Penn State has closed the gap. Penn State's roster, I will admit it, has been miles behind what the Buckeyes have had to offer in years past. But think about this. Kalen King is a top 15 NFL draft pick. Job Robinson, people say he's a top 20. Honestly, I think he should be the first pass rusher taken off the board with the way that Penn State's been able to utilize him. He has such a dynamic game and skill set. He should be, and I hope he is a top 10 pick. I think he's much better than people are scouting him at. Olu Fashanu, franchise left tackle, as I mentioned. Minimum top 5 pick. He's definitely a top 3 player on a big board behind Caleb Williams and the aforementioned Marvin Harrison Jr. on Ohio State. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a generational talent. I don't need to explain that, but Ohio State doesn't have that overwhelming talent at every single spot. And part of that has to do with health, which I'm going to get into as one of my additional reasons. But Penn State has the better quarterback. Drew Aller's more talented than Kyle McCord. The gap's not huge, but Penn State finally has an advantage at quarterback for the first time in a while. Offensive line is better than Ohio State's. Tight end position, you have Cade Stover. I get that. But you also have Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren. 2's greater than 1 the last time I checked. Linebackers are much better at Penn State. Top secondary in the nation, so that means you have the better defensive backs, but Ohio State does have the better wide receivers. There's no debating that. I would argue that also the Buckeyes have the better interior defensive linemen, but in terms of equal running backs, when healthy, when everybody's healthy, Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams dealing with injuries, Chip Trainum as well. Defensive end, too. I'm not going to discount JT Tuimoloau or Jack Sawyer. Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac and Dinez Sutton are a dynamic trio. But those two guys, especially JTT, he's going to be a first round pick as well. Let's move to the additional point number 2. Ohio State's offensive line. I don't think we're being as critical of the offensive line as we have been. Everyone thinks that Ohio State has faced this. The Notre Dame game is one. You went on the road and you beat Notre Dame on the road. That is a huge victory. But what about those other 5 games that the Buckeyes have played? They haven't. Youngstown State, like that's equivalent to Delaware in this case. Ohio State's offensive line is going to face its toughest test with the guys that I've mentioned, and then Manny Diaz's blitz happy defense. The running game is not great this year. They struggle to run the football. Part of that has to do with injuries. Part of that has to do with the inexperience at offensive line. First year starting quarterback, first year offensive coordinator in Brian Hartline. All these things pile up. Yes, you have consistency with Matthew Jones and Donovan Jackson returning at the starting spots, but your tackles are the issue. And that's where Penn State gets that outside pressure. In the next segment, key players that you need to keep an eye on that are going to be focal points in this game, if for both sides, Penn State and Ohio State. Let's hear from one of our sponsors on today's episode, and that is Prizepicks. Prizepicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. Just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on a 2 to 6 player stat projection and watch those winnings roll in. Prize Picks is really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the number one daily fantasy sports app. And Prize Picks has this amazing feature, the reboot policy. Your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. How about that? Injury insurance. For NFL games, top 25 matchups in college football, if you have a player that exits a game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player gets rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy platform with injury insurance. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege with code LockedOnCollege for that deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Also sponsoring today's episode is BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices, and the path forward isn't always clear. Whether you're dealing with decisions around your career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life. So you can move forward with confidence and excitement. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedoncollege. And it is Friday. I hope you're watching this episode on Friday. Of course, you have the chance to watch it back, listen to it on Saturday. But on Fridays, the Locked On Podcast Network brings you Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We preview the entire slate of college football, all the conference rivalries, the playoff implications, the games like Penn State and Ohio State that are definitely going to have a say, and what the Final Four teams are going to be. We know this. This is a playoff caliber game. And Locked On College Football Kickoff Live covers it all across all the Locked On College YouTube channels, including this one, Locked On Nittany Lions. And you can listen to it back wherever you get your podcast. Every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Players to watch. I'm going to start with the Nittany Lions, and then I'll get to the Buckeyes. But for the Nittany Lions, I got a good few of them that are going to have some more responsibilities here because I mentioned Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Ohio State's going to game plan for them. Okay, that's the obvious, but some players that are going to have to be unsung heroes in this case. Dante Cephas is number one. If you're going to stretch the field, this is essentially the only player that you can do it with. Dante Cephas has had enough time. Fans were a little more critical than myself. Everydayers a little more critical than me. Dante Cephas transferred in over the summer and has needed time to adjust to the playbook, adjust to the system. You're going from the MAC conference to the Big Ten. That is a tough ask, especially as quickly as he had to. Mitchell Tinsley did it, transferring from Western Kentucky to Penn State. So what's the delay with Dante Cephas? You had the bye week. You fix those things in the bye week. If Penn State's going to go 3 wide receiver sets, I want to see Cephas, I want to see Trey Wallace, and I want to see Keandre Lambert-Smith all on the field at the same time. And Cephas is the player to stretch the field, the only one. Everyone else is a possession receiver. Andre Lambert-Smith, as quick as he is, he's a possession receiver. Same thing with Trey Wallace. Same thing with Liam Clifford, Malik McLean. Any of those guys that will see the football field, Amari Evans, those guys aren't stretch the field players. Dante Cephas is the fastest guy in that wide receiver room. And they took a chance. They took a shot in that Northwestern game. I think back to that one play because we've only had 11 opportunities to really dissect the deep passing game. But if Penn State is going to help itself out and open up the rushing attack and use that downfield passing, Dante Cephas is going to have to be the one. He's been very quiet. 7 receptions, 103 yards, no touchdowns. The bye week going into this game where Penn State hasn't showed a lot with the downfield passing, except that one play. I'm going to cling to that. I think that was a sign of things to come, not just an outlier, and Dante Cephas is going to run a few more deep routes than we've been accustomed to over the course of the halfway through the season. Next player is Caden Wallace at right tackle because Olu Fashanu is that anchor. Ohio State's not going to try to challenge him. You pick fights that you can win. So Caden Wallace is the lesser here. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to Wallace, but comparing the two, everybody knows that Olu Fashanu is better. So Ohio State's going to play the matchup here. They're going to move JTT. They're going to move Tui Malo over to the other side. And they're not going to take away one of their better defenders against Olu and just have them negate. No, they're going to put that matchup like they did last season against Wallace. And they move JTT everywhere. But I think there's going to be a focus on trying to get him to pressure Drew Aller from the front side so that he's got to roll to his non-dominant side, the left side, given that, he's turned this way and he's turned to the right and he's a right-handed quarterback. And Caden Wallace has to be up to the challenge. He's shown improvement this season. But just so you know, he knows this. The Buckeyes are going to try to go from the right side and pressure Drew Aller that way. Caden Wallace has probably one of the biggest responsibilities out of anybody in this game. Johnny Dixon's the third player. Like JTT, let's flip it over to the other side. Ohio State is going to do what it can to move Marvin Harrison Jr. around. They're going to use motion. They like to get defenses moving. I've heard that quite a bit listening to other commentators. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be in motion a lot. They know that Kalen King is going to not necessarily shadow him 100% of the time, but there is going to be a focus to get King on Harrison Jr. Ohio State, like NFL wide receivers, you take your best player and you try to move him to get mismatches. You can do that with Marvin Harrison Jr. Johnny Dixon is probably going to see Harrison Jr. quite a bit in this game. You like JTT, you want to move this player around to exploit a better matchup. But Dixon is not this lackluster cornerback. Kalen King's the first round talent. I get that. Johnny Dixon has slowly played his way into a day 2 pick. And I think people are still disrespecting Johnny Dixon. He has been the unsung hero of the season. Penn State is able to have the success in the secondary that it has had because of the improvement of Johnny Dixon. Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren, we'll combine the two because Ohio State, when you watch the Purdue film, Purdue actually had a little bit of success going over the middle. Ohio State also runs a 4-2-5. They run that additional safety. Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren are size mismatches for that third safety. Whoever's going to be tasked with covering both of them, either of them. The 12 personnel fits in this case. The 2 tight ends actually match up very well with the way that Ohio State plays, a little bit smaller on the defense. And if they try to use a linebacker, that's just an awful idea. A guy like Tommy Eichenberg will be embarrassed if he has to cover a Theo Johnson, who is just a unicorn for his athleticism. 6'6", 260 pounds, and runs a 4.5. Good luck covering that. But I don't think Ohio State will be able to cover these guys. And with play action and the scheme, Penn State can have some success over the middle of the field and take some pressure off of Drew Aller if Ohio State is going to try to do that. Let's flip it over to the Buckeyes. For the Buckeyes, whoever is playing running back is a player to watch. Henderson, Williams, I think Henderson has a better chance of playing more than a Williams does in this case, but like Penn State, Ohio State's not going to let anybody know who's playing until 2 hours before kickoff when it is mandatory to report. Henderson and Williams are not 100%. Chip Trayanum took a bad hit against Purdue. Nasty hit, exited the game. He is essentially your second leading rusher with Mayan Williams missing more time, but Henderson is also not 100%. Those two guys were not available during Purdue. Then you go down to Dallas Hayden, and Dallas Hayden, this is something important to point out. Great athlete, great rusher. You get him the football in space, he can do a lot of things. But that's not his biggest weakness. No, that's a strength of his. His biggest weakness is pass protection, picking up blitzes. And look at this, a Manny Diaz defense that blitzes 56% of the time. Dallas Hayden, it is on tape. The reason he's a good electrifying player, but the reason he's not on the football field is because he can't pick up a blitz to save his life. Penn State, if they can get Dallas Hayden in the game, oh, Kyle McCord's in trouble. He is awful in blitz pickup and pass protection. Because JTT is going to be, he took over the game last year, and that's why I bring him up, Tuimoloau. Jack Sawyer becomes that player to watch because when you're matched up against Olu Fashanu, what are you going to do? Sawyer was one of the biggest recruits not too long ago, one of the best in the nation, definitely the best in the state of Ohio. What kind of production is he going to have against Olu Fashanu? If Ohio State's going to take that chance to try to create a mismatch with Caden Wallace, well, that means Olu Fashanu is a mismatch for Jack Sawyer. Or I guess I figure out how you want to phrase that. But Olu Fashanu is better than Jack Sawyer and can take him out of the play there. What kind of production will he have? It'll be key to see if Ohio State can get similar types of production on one side if you are going to try to play a little bit of chess here by moving JTT around. And then for Kyle McCord, he's not the player to watch, but who's that secondary target? Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to command the focus of the Penn State defense. Harrison Jr. will win his battles. Kalen King will win some. Johnny Dixon will even win some. But it's about winning more than you lose in this case because Harrison Jr. will get his. But who's that second target? Emeka Egbuka's banged up. I don't know that he'll play, but if he does, he ain't 100%. That seems to be a common theme with these Ohio State players. Cade Stover comes to mind. Cade Stover is he's a very good blocking tight end. Probably is one of the best in a hypothetical 2024 NFL draft class. He's also been the second leading receiver on this Ohio State team. Kyle McCord likes him, but Penn State does have the linebackers to cover. Curtis Jacobs is one of the best coverage linebackers and can handle it. Jalen Reed can handle it as well if he has to match up with him. But Cade Stover is not a pushover. He's no slouch. He's one of the best tight ends in the Big Ten. And I think he's comparable to Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren. But when you have two tight ends as opposed to one, that's the case why Penn State, I give them the nod in terms of having better tight ends in this case. But he's your number two target behind Harrison Jr. If Penn State is going to have the focus on those two, because you can have a focus on more than just one player. It doesn't have to just be about Harrison Jr. Who steps up next? There's a lot of good freshmen, but they don't have all the production. Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, I think those guys have bright futures. Hate to say it, but they do. Is Julian Fleming going to be a factor in this game? Is it personal at this point? You're at the tail end of your college football career. This is your last chance. It's been underwhelming. You spurned Ohio State, or you spurned Penn State to go to Ohio State. Is it now personal to try to prove it one last time when you take on the Pennsylvania team that you left behind? You're from Pennsylvania, right? Is it personal? Do you get those more opportunities with Egbuka missing and Harrison Jr. attracting all the attention, especially with all the attention going towards Harrison? So those are your players to watch. In the final segment, I'm going to discuss what concerns me about this game because this is not a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. Penn State is facing its toughest challenge against Ohio State. We know that. We don't have to we don't have to debate that here. This is the toughest team they've played to this point, and then Michigan will be even tougher. So I have some concerns about what could go wrong here for Penn State. Even though I do think they win, there's some outlying factors that the Nittany Lions got to deal with that aren't necessarily about X's and O's. Before we get to that, let's hear from some more sponsors on today's episode. One of them is Jase Medical. Everyone should be empowered to take care of themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure that you have the medication in hand. Jase Medical is simple. They handle everything from online evaluation to the pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life saving antibiotics with Jase Medical plus an additional $20 off by using promo code locked on at checkout on jasemedical.com. That is JASE medical.com. Promo code locked on for that additional $20 off. And let's hear from another sponsor on this show, and that is Team Ticker. That is the sign back there. That is the sign behind me that you see going through all the stats, the standings, the schedules, weather. Who is Penn State playing? If you're a Penn State fan, you go and get that sign. I love this thing because it's a one of a kind sports sign for Nittany Lion fans. Whether it is football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, soccer, or softball, Team Ticker has you covered. You never have to miss a game as the high-tech retro display provides a countdown to the next big game, as well as daily updates of the latest team news and the stats, the schedules, everything that I mentioned already. All you got to do is download the mobile app, the Team Ticker mobile app, and it's easy to hang on your wall wherever you want to, and you'll have it up and running in minutes. So it's constantly updating with that app and that connection to the internet. Each sign is officially licensed, meeting high quality standards and assembled by hand in the United States. So add this Team Ticker sign to your Nittany Lion Sports collection. And once you hang it, you might even be all the talk from your fellow Penn State Nittany Lion fans. Now, where do you go to get this? Teamticker.com. That is teamticker.com, and pick up your Team Ticker today. It's a one-of-a-kind sports sign, and from now until the end of October, they have a special offer for you. You use promo code Locked On, and you receive $50 off your Team Ticker purchase. That is $50 off with promo code Locked On at teamticker.com. As we move into this final segment, I want to remind you that Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com. Penn State rivals like this show will have coverage of Ohio State, the previews, the recaps, all of it. HappyValleyInsider.com. Got a few concerns for the Nittany Lions going into this game, and they're ones that have been stated. They're the main storylines in this case, but Penn State definitely is aware of them. The first one is Penn State hasn't been as battle tested as Ohio State. We know this. The primetime game against Notre Dame is above all else. Penn State did play West Virginia. They played Iowa. Iowa's going to finish 11-1. Look what it looks like. Those were your best opponents. And Iowa's defense, Penn State did put up 31 points against them. But is Penn State just that dominant? Well, we're going to find out on Saturday. We're also finding out that West Virginia is better than advertised, but you haven't had that battle-ready type of game. Ohio State has, and they came out on top, and they're better because of it. But Buckeyes are also a little banged up. Those physical games, Penn State has been able to have that luxury of having the bye week, having some opponents, some cushion there for this type of game in Ohio against Ohio State. The next thing that I'm concerned about is how is Drew Aller going to handle the nerves, the inexperience. He's returning home. This is a big deal. What is the mindset? What is the mindset of a young Drew Aller who is a sophomore, a true sophomore, 19, 20 years old, right? From Medina, Ohio. And growing up, I can't speak for him, but I imagine that if he had dreams and aspirations of playing football at the next level before Penn State started recruiting him, Ohio State had to be the destination. I imagine there are a lot of fans in his family of the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's just the fact of the matter. This is an opportunity to stick it to your hometown school that overlooked you. Could be good, could also be an opportunity to be a bull in the china shop, and you don't want to be that. You don't want to do too much. I worry about Drew Aller not necessarily being nervous, but trying to do a little too much in this case. This is your third road start. This is also the most hostile environment that you played in. Yes, they played in Ann Arbor last year, and he saw some time in the fourth quarter with Sean Clifford exiting in the game, but not when you're starting a top 10 showdown, college football playoff implications on the line. The pressure is there. How does somebody who is 19 face this for the first time? Illinois Northwestern, not exactly the toughest environments to go into, even though Urbana was better than Northwestern. This is your most hostile road environment that he has been a part of. Pressure is also on Penn State. We talked about the pressure on Drew Aller. Pressure's on Penn State as a program. You haven't won in 6 years. You haven't won in the last 5 meetings in Columbus. So it's been more than a decade since you won out in Columbus, and then you're on a 6-game losing streak. A lot of recruiting battles hinge on this. James Franklin has only beaten Ohio State once. People are talking about it as a legacy game. You have more to lose than the Buckeyes. And my final two concerns are the players themselves. JT Tuimoloau, he took over the game last year, forced those turnovers, changed the entire complexity of the game in the fourth quarter. That is the thing. He took over the game. He was the difference maker. He's the MVP. He's a future first round pick. That is my concern, how Ohio State is going to use him, and is Penn State going to be able to handle him, especially if he's away from Olu Fashanu? Do you need to draw extra attention? Do you need to leave a tight end in the block? Tuimoloau is better. How does Penn State adjust? And yes, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr., like it needs to be said. It's obvious. He's got a size advantage, too, that not a lot of people are mentioned, I don't think. He's 6'4", 200 pounds. And you're going up against cornerbacks, any of the cornerbacks that are going to face him, including the safeties. Kalen King's 5'11". Johnny Dixon's 6 foot. Daquan Hardy's 5'9". Cam Miller's 6 foot. Jalen Reed is 6 foot. Keaton Ellis is 5'11". So these guys are going to have their work cut out for them if Kyle McCord is basically going to just throw it up and say, okay, Marvin Harrison Jr., come down with it. We can challenge them because you've got the height advantage here over any of these defensive backs. Marvin Harrison Jr. better draw a lot of attention, but yes, I am concerned about the number 2 overall pick in next year's draft. It needs to be said. I think I could have left it out of this episode. That'll do it for my preview and prediction. I appreciate you joining me on this show. Give it a like, comment once again your score prediction in this one. Subscribe to the channel and the show if you haven't already on YouTube. Wherever you get your podcast, we'll have an instant recap, a live show talking about this one between Penn State and Ohio State. And for more Penn State football content and everything else regarding the Nittany Lions, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.